All right, and we're in speaker view. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our NTC Now, our COP16 debrief. Hi, Carly. Hi, Ben. Hi, Andreas. Daniel, Fernando,
Hello,
Kurt,
everyone.
calling out the people on videos. Nice to see you all. We've got kind of tremendous response for this session, so I'm really excited. I know we have a few people that accepted to kind of share their experiences from COP16 and that kind of raised their hands to do it, which we'll call upon, like you, Kurt. But if you feel bold and you want to do it as well, super open to that.
Sarah, can you see this now?
So what I'm going to do really briefly, as usual, is just go through the mini NTC intro, and then after that, I'm going to open the floor actually to the participants to start talking about their kind of experience of COP16, what you learned while you were there, what you're kind of taking back from it, and what that means about how you go forward for you, for your organization, things like that. So share screen. Let's see, how do I do that? Okay, so yeah, again, welcome everyone to everyone who just came in. You're in the NTC Now, our weekly community meeting. We haven't had one for 2 weeks because a lot of this community was at COP. I think that was amazingly exemplified by that video that Gilad sent me where at Bloom, about like a quarter of the room was an NTC member. That was so amazing to see. But yeah, this is just a super quick reminder that as usual, you have access to the Slack, which is our community forum, place for all the opportunities to be posted, but also for you all to network. You have access to our Luma calendar. This is where we're posting all of our events online and in person. Click subscribe to figure out what's going on and when. And of course, follow us on LinkedIn and tag us when you have things to celebrate so that we can amplify what you're doing. In terms of the quick updates, what we're all working on really hard right now at NTC is this impact report. It's the first one that we're doing. We're looking at 2024, what we've achieved for our members, and also in general for the industry. So there is the survey that I've sent to you in a newsletter and an individual email. Please, please, please fill it. It will be the last survey of the year, which is exciting. And then I'll try to do less from now on. But that's important. So I will share this mural and you can click on this link if you'd like. In terms of the events that we're going to be talking about today, when we pass the mic to Gilad a little bit later on in this meeting, is kind of all of these events that we were chatting about at the last NTC Now. So ensuring the nature positive transition, the kind of state of nature tech guide for businesses, the celebratory drinks, the closed workshops on unlocking biodiversity MRV, and then Kurt, super excited to hear about how reimagining nature went. Quick recap of opportunities. There's a deadline due tonight if you ever have time to fill in this thing. The Envision conference on November 21st in San Francisco. If you're based in the area, it's a great place to be in front of really valuable investors, as Gilad says. And then excitingly, 2 major resources came out this month at COP, our State of Nature Tech report or Integrating Nature Tech, a guide for businesses. Many of you are featured in there. I think it's a really great roadmap for businesses to integrate nature tech. And of course, developing the nature tech taxonomy framework. It's all our work on how we're going to develop this nature tech taxonomy and the first kind of examples of it. So there we go. Copying and pasting this into the chat and passing it on to Kurt. Would you mind being the first one to kind of share what your thoughts were on Cali?
Hey. Yes. Hello. Hi there. Hi everyone. I'm just getting back from daycare drop-off, so excuse the tardiness. It was right on time actually. Um, Look, a few thoughts that come to mind. First of all, it was wonderful to connect in person with so many from this community and others who we connected with online only previously. It was fantastic to do that, and to have the opportunity to do that as part of the Blue Zone as well. So really a huge amount of gratitude to Nature Tech Collective for facilitating all of those passes and allowing us to participate in many of those sessions in the Nature Positive Pavilion and others. That was it was a really important way for us to collaborate and to gain insights and to share our work. So I just wanted to start off on that note. So one of the things that we organized was the Reimagining Nature session, a series of roundtables in the second week of COP at the Blue Zone, and I think that the feedback from those sessions were very positive. There were small groups, small group discussions, and it was a welcome change from some of the other formats, which were typically around panel style discussions. And in those formats, there might be Q&A at the end, but there's often limited time for discussion and for to hear multiple voices. And so I think for having that format and being able to go a little deeper in our small groups and having the opportunity for many other organizations to be represented from the NTC, from the Nature Tech Collective, was really positive. And I think just broadly, there was the activities going on in the Blue Zone, and then there were others in the Green Zone and other broadly happening in Cali, including Bloom. And so I think there was just a lot of great touch points with potential clients. There was a lot of inquiries or a lot of discussion around metrics. I mean, that's very relevant for all of our work, and how we've set these targets in Montreal, but how are we tracking towards them and how are we going to measure them, and what are the ins and outs? How can we align? How can we make sure that our how we are working towards these problems are integrated and making it easier for the customers that we're speaking with to digest and to solve that. And so I think there was another great workshop that Teal organized that and a few others from this group participated in, that also delved into some of those topics. And so I think the opportunities for collaboration and alignment are really strong, and will sort of help us take our overall mission forward together. So there are a few initial thoughts. I'll leave it for some others to have their perspective as well.
Thanks, Kurt, and thanks for being such a great moderator for the Reimagining Nature.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Megan, you also were happy to share.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that stood out to me that kind of blew my mind. And so I was actually curious to discuss it with everybody to see if anyone resonated with this or heard something different. So the first piece is I was at an event at Bloom in a roundtable, and there was this expectation, and someone actually articulated it, and it kind of made me understand a lot, or was able to connect a lot of dots. But the expectation was that CSRD was going to unleash all of this corporate funding into nature restoration. And there was a lot of this, people asking corporates, why aren't you investing outside your value chain? When is this finance coming? Blah, blah, blah. And that was surprising to me, because that's not what the CSRD is doing. The CSRD is purely a risk disclosure transparency initiative. So the only thing it's going to do is mean companies put more information in their sustainability or financial reports around nature-related risks. That should, in theory, lead to accountability, which should lead to action, which should then lead to investment. But it's not like this mechanism that's going to unlock financing that will flood into the nature restoration space. So that was kind of something that I was like, oh, I didn't realize that there was that much expectation. And I was curious if among this group, if you also see that there's that expectation, or if it's kind of just like a random pocket of things. So I was curious if it was a thematic issue that maybe needed to be addressed in a broader industry communication thing. And then I had another one on metrics.
Pause for anyone who wants to answer, out loud or in the comments.
Yeah, I can jump in. So this is very cool. Thanks for sharing. And as we are following very closely what the EU Commission is doing, because we are in touch basically with a small group at EU Commission. So exactly. So what is part of the CSRD, and that's right, is a small part in the section ESRSE4. Sounds very complex, but this is the section where the companies have to write in the information about nature and biodiversity. There is a small section where companies now in the first round, larger companies need to write down their efforts in not only the risks related to nature and biodiversity, but also can write down what they are doing to mitigate these risks. But this is, as far as I know, not yet a requirement. So there's not a need for companies to do that. And this is still voluntary action. What we are looking into is more like the nature restoration law in Europe, which is disconnected to the CSRD at the moment. And the nature restoration law, how that works is that, I mean, the law that has been decided, and the member states of the EU now have to submit their suggestions, what they're going to do until end of 2026. So they have time until end of 2026 to submit their suggestions. So, but there is no, let's say, and I still miss that in Europe, there is no kind of sense of urgency right now to do something like that. So when I look at Germany, where we are based, yeah, companies are very much focused right now on the CSRD requirements and the documentation, and the sustainability departments are kind of overwhelmed by that, is my feeling, with all the data and the documentation they have to do. And nature restoration law is a completely different topic, and let's see what happens there. But I think we have to wait until the member states come up with something to have. I would have no expectations from the regulation side when we talk about that.
I agree. And then the other, yeah, Gilad, good point. The other thing that I thought was very interesting as a takeaway was this focus on, again, like the metrics and the reporting. There were two quotes that I picked up that I thought were super interesting. One company said, "What will banks do with the CSRD information once they have it? Why does the number of hectares matter?" So they're like not kind of zooming out in my mind and seeing the big picture around connecting the dots between environmental degradation and company activities. And like that's what the CSRD is trying to do, is create that transparency. But companies themselves are just seeing it as, and not all companies, but many that I met are just seeing it as this like ESG exercise that they need to comply to. Not like a fundamental shift in how they think about incorporating nature into their businesses. So to me, it feels like a very immature viewpoint on the corporate side with respect to like why these things exist. And then there was another example of someone saying that in China, companies are like starting to report, species data about their businesses, but again, they're not connecting it to the actual business activities and like why the species are important. So there seems to be this kind of like gap between biodiversity protection and what businesses are doing, and the fact that CSRD and other transparency regulations are all about forcing companies to connect those dots somehow. And like that's right where we sit. So we think about it every day and think about how to make that happen. But like I was just surprised at how not integrated that the whole space kind of seems right now. So there's a lot of work to do in my mind around bringing corporate thinking towards why these things are important, to the point on like them not understanding biodiversity. It's just like they're not even understanding why anyone is concerned about their role on biodiversity, right? Like there's just this huge gap in dots in my mind. So I'll stop there. But those were my two aha takeaways that I wanted to chat about with the group.
Yeah, and we should talk about how we address that in the Nature Tech Collective. Thank you so much, Megan. And Lucrecia, you agree with Megan, and you also had agreed to potentially step up and share some of your thoughts. I think you're in the room.
Yes, I am. I just have very lower voice because I lost it because of COP, because I was talking too much. But I just wanted to share my thought, which is similar to what Megan said. And I don't think companies are understanding also their dependencies on nature and what are their risk because of climate change and nature degradation as well. And another thing that I noticed during COP was that they don't really see the point of it. They just do it because of CSRD. So it's not. It's just an exercise. I have to do my homework, and that is it. It's not because of the need of protecting nature. Did you
Yeah.
follow? Because I think I lost connection.
No, you're here. Thank you so much. And then I think Daniele, you'd raised your hand.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I think I didn't hear much in the COP was case studies about the financial risks, how much money companies are losing and investors are losing because of environmental degradation. The business case, the financial business case to invest in nature, is still like compliance, and there is a lot of discussion about the indicators. There is no homogeneity in data collection, but the business case to invest in nature is not there yet, unfortunately. So, and we know there is this recognition that we need to save nature, we need to restore, but at the company level, they do it, but I don't think the business in the sector is mature enough with tool, with homogeneity of information, with scalability of information, with the analytical systems that can prove that it is actually a good business. It makes good business sense to actually invest in natural positivity. And I think that was, in my opinion, the big barrier for the discussion to move on, and the big barrier not to get the $200 billion in funding. This is what I was biggest feedback from the scope.
Can I add to that, Daniele, because I agree with you. I heard recently from a VC, a nature tech VC, who made the point, I haven't seen the research that says that companies who are good at managing biodiversity perform better. And of course I was like, oh, that's a good point, interesting challenge. So I Googled it to see if there was any research, and I found an academic paper that was calling for someone to do research on that connectivity. So the business case, exactly to your point, it isn't there yet. It's not researched, it's not documented. And we saw that happen with like gender equity. We saw it happen, I think, with climate, where the business cases started to emerge, the research started to demonstrate. And so then that convinced companies, or at least made them look like they were, being left behind if they weren't doing something about it. But yeah, we still are missing, I think, that really big piece, not just in corporates, but also on the VC side as well, for the nature tech companies.
And it's to a certain extent is actually limiting a little bit our business, unfortunately. And then I was discussing this with a few people. We're not seeing the 10, and I was even discussing with Jig. We're not seeing the 10 million, 20 million, 50 million checks in natural techs because we don't have the market. And we don't have the market because the private sector is not really stepping in. You see the 1 million, 2 million checks, eventually $3 million check, but we're not really there yet as a sector. So the big question that I would have to Gilad and to NTC, how can you actually really make this mainstream and the type of alliances that we can build with the governments, with the private sector, with the financial institutions to really make it a real consolidating sector.
Well, that's kind of a perfect segue, isn't it? Gig is in the room as well, which is great. I think maybe Gilad and Gig, if you want to start tag teaming on what your impressions were of COP and what you think and how you think we're going from there.
Hi, everyone. Greetings from Impact Week Barcelona. Yet another event where there's a lot of investors talking about wanting to invest into nature. See how much of it actually happens. This is a really heavy day for many of us. So yeah, it took a while to digest. And as I've seen like Carly write about, we need government to step in. Something tells me I'm not going to be seeing that happen anytime soon. With that said, let's get to some happy stances. From an NTC perspective, people have been asking me what was COP like, and I would say that while like for humanity COP, this COP was so-so. For the nature tech community, I think it was actually quite good. Yeah, as Paige mentioned, Bloom went quite well for us. The Nature Tech Report took a main stage. We had a lot of side events. We were invited to a lot of events where our community either moderated, led entire sessions, our voice was requested. And in the follow-up meetings, the one-on-one meetings, you're getting a lot of interest in what we're doing as a community and a lot of interest in our members. So just generally speaking, I think this felt almost like the debut of Nature Tech on the stage. In terms of just like a quick play-by-play, we started with an event that was hosted by UNEP WCMC. It was in their pavilion on the 22nd. Pretty small room, but it was packed. I think capacity was 15. We had 30 people, 35 people. They were kind of like all over. Jahed was moderating. Jahed from Cerulean was moderating a session that had Biometrio, and it had Chloris, and it had Veritree. And I know I'm missing someone. I'm really sorry. But it was a really, really profound conversation. Very kind of inward looking in this conversation. What I loved is there's sort of an interesting debate between whether we should be focusing on, the CFO or the CMO, right? Should Nature Tech be in service of telling the story, of driving interest into nature, of connecting, or should it be about the risk side of things? What is the killer app, if you will? It was a conversation where we had a lot of consultants who came in after, and they're looking to bring TNFD to Korea, for example. And this was new to them. So every one of these opportunities adds up, and that was really good. And that kind of led us out for Bloom, which I would say, I was there for the first half of it. I would say in terms of the what we call the green zone, the non-business focused so much events, Bloom was definitely one of the highlights. I personally found the attendance skewing heavily towards nature teams, ESG teams, decision makers from corporates, from big consulting firms, basically our buyers. We had a fantastic event the end of the first night on ensuring the nature positive transition, which was packed. A lot of the right folks were there. Insurance has become a hot topic, which is great for us because it's definitely one of the missing pieces that we have. Having an insurance layer in order to de-risk, in order to drive more adoption of Nature Tech for NBS. And then we keynoted the next day in the big room to pretty full attendance, where we debuted both the Nature Tech report, and inside was the Nature Tech taxonomy. And by the way, we also had our definition of what Nature Tech is in the report. And our definition in broad brushstrokes is technology in service of the nature positive transition. Our taxonomy is in there as well. That's a project we all worked on together. These are just increasingly more tools to basically flatten the learning curve towards adoption. And we've gotten great feedback from it. I've had investors write me on LinkedIn saying, finally, we have a way of actually navigating the space. A week later, I was at SOCAP, which is a big impact investing summit. I had one of the biggest private foundations in Australia asking for us to help them guide their future investments into nature. Sorensen Impact Center, it's a massive nonprofit foundation. They want to open an entire nature lens. So just being there and doing this work puts us in the position of helping facilitate, helping us convene, and helping direct funds and energies. So that's been going very well. And then Kurt, thankfully, stepped in to moderate a session that had 18 of our members there. And it was really, really solid. It was at the Nature Positive Pavilion, which is one of the biggest pavilions in the Blue Zone. By the way, it feels really good where you're seeing 60 of these like name tags for Blue Zone, and it says Nature Tech Collective. So we were like a little army over there. It's pretty awesome. And then the last thing that I wanted to kind of highlight in terms of COP16 itself, before I get a bit into what we have in mind for the future for 2025 and beyond, we had a couple of closed door workshops. As you may know, we've had a great engagement with Conservation International, who is one of our first anchor members, and they sought our help with some internal understanding of where nature tech plays a role for the various groups, but also at the same time trying to build some sense-making assets as it relates to where nature tech could play a definitive role in biodiversity, and identifying the gaps and potentially the opportunities. And they've given us a wide berth to make this happen. And so in these two workshops where we were able to bring meaningful stakeholders in the space, some of the big engineering firms were there. One of the biggest paper and pulp companies that is now a member of ours, OG from Japan, was there. Planet, a whole bunch of really smart folks were in there, including some of our members, of course, who we love. And I think it was the beginning of a phase where we as the Nature Tech Collective, we spent the last year solidifying what nature tech means. And we were not there yet 100%. We're still in the process of doing so, but we're getting there. Milestones include the taxonomy, the report, the beginning of these matchmaking sessions, getting people on stage and all the rest. And we're getting it to a point where we're now able to draw in the attention of more and more of these meaningful stakeholders. I guess that's the best way of saying it, active players in the space. And as we start convening them and they're sharing with us their insights, their troubles, outside of just the community, it puts us in a position that I would venture to say we're pretty uniquely suited for, of being a facilitator of sector-wide initiatives. And that isn't fully sorted yet. Actually, Paige was kind of wondering whether I should even bring this up yet, because we don't have we have a half-baked notion of what we want to do, and it's around coalition building, and it's around getting to practical, no-nonsense action that can be taken by the NGOs, the private sector, towards nature towards nature loss mitigation. And over the next couple of months, Gig, who is going to join the conversation a bit, and other members of the wider ecosystem are going to be drilling down on understanding what that takes. One idea that's come up, and I'll just mention really brief before I let Gig jump in, is around this notion of transition labs. Some of you have met the team from Soul Forest. They're one of our newest members. They're amazing, and they have a vision of putting out an entire network of transition labs, places where you take 100 hectares in a specific key biome, you basically start running different methodologies and different technologies and seeing what works, what's effective. You start building apples to apples comparisons. You do it as a public good. You basically close the path towards uncertainty. And if you have this as a network, this is a proven concept. It's been, some companies and some governments have been doing it in different areas. But if you could build a global network of this, then you're able to create some meaningful impact by just having knowledge as a public good. But we're not there yet on deciding what we're going to be doing. I'll stop there for a moment. There's a few other things I want to go over, but Gig, if you want to say something.
Yeah, hi guys, real pleasure. It was a pleasure to meet you guys also in the COP. Like Gilad said, what we're seeing is, and I think we are all worried a bit, and rightfully so, that we can't see the budgets that will support right now the group as a whole. And the group is, on one hand, the group is critical, for data transparency, for an accelerating change, and how do we get funded? How do we get enough funding early? I think it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, question for us as a group. We're trying to, and I think I'm very happy with where we are. We managed to get into some rooms that we didn't have access before. And these rooms were the highest level of the nonprofit world, and some of the people that can get us in front of C-levels in the corporate world, especially corporate world with long supply chains, these are the people that are damaging nature. So either talking about conservation tech or things around regen ag and the transformation to better resource extraction. We're finally, for the first time, in the room and being listened to. And then we're working with some of those groups, and we're happy to hear your feedback, but basically trying to pitch in the concept of transition labs, where these are basically field testing, intensive field testing, where we measure, for example, in agriculture, how to do things, what works, what doesn't, on a very multivariant, and in parallel, creating those hubs, in each of those hubs, to oversample, so we can send a lot of money to a lot of people that are working on the transparency, on the data, and how do we bring data in situ, satellites, the mixture, traceability, etc. That's also a huge question. So we're seeing some sort of a buying and an interest in supporting those ideas, hopefully catalytic and corporate money, but this is early. But we're finally in the room, and we're finally hearing a buy-in, and ideally for us, we could create like mutual grant writing by a lot of the major organization in the field and say, hey, we need a lot of money. And it's going to, instead of competing over, people could actually share resources. But that's basically where we are, and we are in the process right now of following up with some of those people that can potentially put us in front of decision makers and trying to fine tune our message and our needs. Thank you.
Hey guys, there's a little more here, but I'll stop there in case anyone wants to chime in, have thoughts, questions, any of that stuff. Just jump right in.
Yeah, and just to add to that broadly, this, like, we have a half an hour left, and this is the opportunity as well to kind of respond to what you think some of these goals are, and where you also kind of are interested for NTC to help and support and go. So definitely, please kind of like raise your hand, share your thoughts. Daniel.
Yeah, there is one thing. It was interesting. So two team members from my team were at COP as well, and so that was interesting what they mentioned. I mean, they talked to a couple of really big companies like Amazon and others. So these front runners in the industry, right? So investing already, and I mean, yeah. So a lot of so he said, well, he's even struggling right now. Answering to all these cold emailing, cold calling approaches from startups in nature tech startups, because he said basically everyone, maybe from the industry, that has a startup, try to approach him and try to get connected and get an appointment and get would like to be introduced to the company, and I think that's a challenge. We definitely, maybe Nature Tech Collective is a good platform for that, to discuss that, how to approach this very small amount of companies in this space that are front runners, that doing things, that invest into nature, that want to test things, that want to test solutions. But I think that's definitely a challenge. I mean, I don't know, I would love to hear other opinions as well. We have had this challenge, or we're having this challenge since a couple of months now, that a lot of people not responding at all to any outreach we're doing, what kind of outreach it may be. We tested highly individual outreach campaigns, not even automated or stuff like that, because that doesn't work. I believe that in that space. You need to build relationships, very personal relationships with people making decisions. But yeah, I mean, every one of us is approaching these very few or small amount of companies, and I think that's the challenge we need to discuss, how we can maybe jointly speak to companies and see, okay, who is interested in case studies, right? Being Nature Tech Collective as a platform where companies can raise their hand and say, hey, we want to test this, we want to do that. Maybe we can have more like a joint outreach approach. I don't know if that works, but it's just a thought I had.
Sorry, Gilad saying Jeffrey's worked on that.
Sorry, Jeffries was a company I was answering Sophie. I was working on some of the risk modeling. I think Jean, you raised a hand. You want to jump in?
Yes, Jean.
Yeah, sorry.
So maybe it's a question kind of naive because I don't know so much about the past of nature technology. Myself, I work on impact blockchain. And I just, when you talk about reaching out to companies as a collective, I guess that in this group, there's different type of skills, right? Is it like just selling all the tech, climate tech to the buyers, or you're talking on specific credits on chain or not on chain?
Daniel, maybe you want to answer, but my interpretation of that is that the Nature Tech Collective is a smorgasbord of different players in the industry. And so there's definitely ways that we can kind of gather and collaborate as like mini coalitions of different things along the value chain. That's not the right word, but yeah. And my answer to that, I mean, is first, we're going to double down on demo days next year. So that'll be a way to put kind of people in front of the right buyers, and there's other ways that we can think about doing that, definitely.
Yeah, so I can help you doing that. I've done it in the past. So yeah. And
yeah, there's one thing I can add on that is something I thought about is when I think maybe some of you or many of you, I don't know WBCSD, so the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, which is a very established organization bringing together companies from different areas, also for education, and also an organization like Nature Tech Collective, but with a different approach in the industry. And what they're doing, for example, is they have now starting a, how should I call it? It's like a purchasing platform or buyers platform where buyers can come together, discuss, so members of WBCSD can discuss their requirements. And WBCSD is like acting like also a platform for saying, hey, look, we have this database, we have the suppliers in our database. What do you need? And I don't know, maybe this can be an idea, something like that.
Yeah, so to that note, Daniel, WBCSD, they did announce, it's basically kind of like a buyer's club type thing. So basically, it's WBCSD has sector-specific groups, and that's sort of what we are trying to pitch like ourselves independently to different. We're trying to find essentially the right category leader who could coalesce their peers in order to work on a specific challenge that they're all facing and commit to an advanced market, basically a purchase commitment. And then we have heard that WBCSD is trying to do that, so we're going to be in touch with them about where we could support. Generally speaking, the role we see ourselves playing on that note is, yeah, there's the demo days, the corporate accelerators, which are individualistic. We're on a path. For us, we see these sort of independent corporate accelerators as case studies in order to prove ourselves out so we could get to an entire cohort. So several paper companies, several P&G companies, anything of that sort. But we're not precious about our brand. Like if we could not do it because someone else is doing it better than us, that's amazing. And so we're very much in a collaborative mode. We are in touch with Business for Nature, WBCSD. As you guys know, we're very close to Nature for Climate, Climate Collective. Like there are no enemies or competition. Our competition is it not being done. And so if we could disappear and as Gig likes to say, go surfing instead, that's a priority. Yeah, Paige, did you want to bring in Lena?
I did. I wanted to bring in Lena, and then after that, Sergio.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I actually joined a bit late because I'm still traveling. So I'm not sure if this has already been said, but one thing that was really interesting that came up in the roundtables that we did with the World Climate Foundation was that we need, a lot of companies don't actually know what they need. So in terms of kind of being able to sell, one suggestion was that the Nature Tech Collective taxonomy was also designed or maybe modified in a way where it was almost like a menu of services. So rather than categorizing the nature tech startups by category, it would be more based on use case. So, you know, why would I need species range data, or why would I need DNA, or if I, you know, want to be able to measure this, these are the types of tools that I need, and these are the types of startups or providers that can provide those services and those tools. So I don't know if that's already been covered, but I thought that was a really interesting point that was made.
I was going to let you, Gilad and Gig, answer that because actually I think that's the direction that you were taking, is kind of more the use case approach for the taxonomy.
Yeah. So if you haven't seen the taxonomy yet, I'd love for you guys to see it instead of any and all honest feedback. The way we have this in mind is there's actually 3 dimensions. First one is very much, Lena, what you were saying. It's actually focused on the use case. So is it conservation? Is it the region ag transition? Is it the built environment? And then there's subclusters of it. And eventually you get to essentially identifying the solution. And then the next lens would be technology. And that's based on our augmented 5Ms, which are essentially, is about putting market pressures, measurement, MRV, collecting the data, right? Modeling, which is the sense making, material change, which in other words is deployment, like doing the do, right? Drone-based seeding or whatever, and monetization, which is more around innovative finance and stuff of the sort. And the third one is more about geography and nature. And that one, admittedly, we didn't get to finalizing. And so we just shared our inspirations, but it's basically going to be some sort of mix of One Earth's bi-regional taxonomy alongside with the planetary boundaries. And I actually just saw something really cool from the Stockholm Resilience Center. They created a EEIV, which stands for something impact, environmental impact variables. It's basically a list of how to quantify or evaluate the impact that a company creates. But the idea is, how do you take the planetary boundaries and address it to a business by business standpoint? And so that plus the geographic locations will be the building blocks for a taxonomy that actually works in terms of answering the question. You know, for my challenge, I need solution X, right, using tools Y and location Z. And the vision that we have, and it's being sorted with with members, Impact Labs, and other members of the community, is we would like to see this become an actual human interface of an LLM, taking all the information that's being collected through our work and the web in order to actually give answers. You need a taxonomy that is machine readable and rigorous in order to get to that point. A lot of the taxonomies out there are amazing, but are not that rigorous. They're pretty fluffy. And that's one of the reasons we started this whole taxonomy project. And the vision will be to provide this tool as a public good to actually address those questions. Iggy?
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing is we try to do it tech style, meaning this is an MVP, this is an initial version. We really need your feedback. It can be as specific. You forgot something, which we know for a fact that we did. Something you're missing something. There's at the end, we, as Gilad said, we want to allow people that are looking for business solutions or transition solutions to be able to navigate through this. people that are coming from the technological space, people that are coming from the nature space, and ideally also next year we'll start integrating also the social aspects and social impacts. But it's really a call for help, and this is just the first version. We're starting to get feedback, and we want to constantly improve this to the point that we can run it. It can help LLM create an interface for solutions. But please provide feedback. We left a feedback form where people can provide specific detailed feedback. If anyone wants to join the efforts, you're more than welcome, and we're very open to that.
Yeah, and I'll send out,
And thank you so much, Impact Lab.
Thanks, Gig. Okay, Sergio, you were next to.
Yeah, thank you. So thank you so much for the feedback and letting us know what happened in COP16. I just wanted to provide a little bit of context. This is kind of the thing, and the insights we've been developing in the last 2 years is kind of like all that's going on around investment that is only being done through the value chain, talking to corporate players. It's been kind of the road we've been on for the last year and something. And we're really being focused on how we can make it so that climate finance is something that is feasible. So I just wanted to share some insights of the last kind of work that we've been doing and where we're focusing on, and hopefully that can also kind of give a path towards what I believe right now is the only clear sector that has a problem, and this is around water intensive industries, and there's specifically a CEO water mandate that has already been signed by 376 different companies. And the only way that you can actually restore watersheds and basins is through doing nature work and nature-based solutions. So that's one of the places where right now we're focused on. We still, we have a couple of months to get some feedback. And the way that we are approaching it, and that's kind of where I wanted to also intervene, is that we're actually mitigating risk through the Nature Tech Collective. So we want to provide kind of for these type of solutions, we want to provide the whole portfolio of the Nature Tech Collective to be able to, and right now we're working with Heineken and with Coca-Cola in Mexico. And we're just basically saying, hey, it's not only us, it's hey, it's the whole collective that you can rely on. And then there's another initiative that I would like to point to, which is called FAIR, which is a Kohler initiative, and they're also kind of working with kind of a liaison between kind of nature-based solutions and kind of nature tech and industry. But I think right now, if you want to go towards different methods of financing, which are these environmental commodities and just like direct investment towards these type of initiatives, it's going to be a very difficult sell. I think right now and at least in Mexico, where the alarms have been raised is around water and the hydraulic stress that the country is going through. And I think this is something that is going to be replicated in almost all of Latin America as well. So yeah, I just wanted to kind of chime in with kind of our focus, and hopefully that can provide some feedback.
Thanks, Sergio. Really great to hear from you too. All right, and then Sathya. Great to see you. Your turn to
Thank
take
you.
the mic.
I got a little late to this call because of the homework what you gave me, Paige. Wonderful to see some of the friends that I already met a week ago. 3 things really stood out for me. One, the beautiful bond that I experienced with many of our friends from NTC. I walked into my first COP and it really felt like I was welcomed. Thanks to many of you who are in the call, Kurt, I see, Daniel, of course, Gilad, Gig, so many of you. And second, the importance of building these bio-regional living labs is something that I got a lot of insight into, a lot of feedback. And what came out pretty strongly is we need to create maybe about, some said 50, some said 100, but we really need to create templates which provide a way for us to have highest quality of ecological restoration, or some of us are calling it natural capital, some of us are calling it ecological restoration. Again, taxonomy is Gilad's work, so I will lean into his expertise, but overall enhancing the nature. So in whatever form and shape we're doing, the ways to do it to ensure we get the highest environmental progress is those templates seem to be pretty were emphasized quite a bit. The third thing, which was a little counterintuitive when I initially heard, but I thought it was quite tactical. When enough money is not directly flowing into nature, one interesting perspective that I heard, which I thought could be valuable for this group, is how do we position this in such a way that maybe by investing, into nature, there is a 2:1 benefit for, say, humans, local communities, and nature. Then you dip in not just into a new budget called nature budget, you dip into livelihoods budget. You dip into, say, if there is a women empowerment budget in a state, in a government, if there is an allocation, then you dip into those budgets, because nature, when we keep saying that it's a part of every business, why are we not dipping into more pockets of money available for this? So these were some 3 important points which I took away. I wanted to quickly share. Thank you.
Thank you. So great to hear so many of you sharing. We're also obviously going to be posting the recording of this, and Amalia is going to be kind of like sharing the main points that we all talked about. So just making a note of that. And then Daniele.
Yeah, I just wanna, if I start looking at the big picture of all the different things that we've been talking about in this session, we already, in my opinion, start seeing in what eventually we can get to, like a sort of a organizational approach on how to scale natural positivity. So, because, for example, we have Satya that has been talking about the living labs, essential for understanding what can be made on the ground. Taxonomy can help us define the DMRB system that measure the impacts of these living labs. We can have risk modeling that can quantify the impact of these living labs in the economy. They can be used to develop financial mechanism to scale, and there is all disclosure linked to the TCFD. So if you start looking at all the different dots, there is a rationale behind it. So, and I think I was wondering if maybe we shouldn't try to make an effort to make a little bit of a common sense instead of doing bits here and there, but try to develop a more comprehensive approach, articulated approach on some real case studies on the ground with all the different components, bringing main actors together and prove the business concept really as a collective organization. Probably would be, we might have the strengths to do it as a collective organization of stable organization joining forces together.
It's a really interesting vision. I like it. These are all parts of the conversation that we were having that we'd love to have with you all in these months as we start closing up the rest of the year and looking to 2025. I know we're really up at time, so I'm just gonna run through like a lightning series of last notes. And it's amazing to see so many of you show up for this town hall. It's us as a community, and you guys are here, and that means the world to us. So thank you so much. By the end of the year, Paige is leading in this initiative that I mentioned to some of you of putting together our inaugural impact report. It will be a report that is both displaying the value we've created for you, the members, and the value that we collectively created for the world as a public good. Additionally, you'll be getting more personalized emails where we kind of like share with you where we think we brought you value, and we would love to get your feedback on any and all. This is how we improve. We're also going to have at least one more report released. This one is going to be not so much a report, more of a sector map. It's going to be around regenerative cattle. It's one of the first commission reports from a member. And that will drop by the end of this month or early next. We're also working at least one more demo day. We'll keep you posted on that. The demo day works in the form of one of the anchor members or potential anchor members sharing their challenge, and we sort of provide them with a list of potential candidates. They choose which ones they would love to hear from. And then there's one-on-one pitch and Q&A, just another way to get you guys in front of potential buyers and investors. For 2025, I mentioned a bit about these workshops and what's brewing. Geeg and I mentioned it's good that it's half-baked. We want to do this on purpose in a way that's slow and is often collecting information from you, the members, so we can understand where NTC as a very ambitious but yet small organization could play a meaningful difference. Aside from that, a few more kind of like community specific things that we're focusing on. More practical initiatives that we could take as a collective, as a representative body, things like, there's been a bunch of conversations around opening access to IBAT. Yoni from NALA and a few others have been bringing this up, and we've actually been able to corner IBAT for an actual conversation. And they have their own concerns around them being linked to potential species extinction using their data and things like that sort. So there's clearly a trust deficit that we need to best, and we have some ideas on how to do it, and we'll get there. That's an example of a practical thing that we could do. Here's another one. I had a walk with a few different project developers. They would love to have cheap/free access to Planet's satellite and technology. Well, we got the head of conservation for Planet to commit to working with us on doing something exactly of the sort. So this is the kind of stuff we would love to help with. It starts with you telling us where we could work together and us building small groups to help each other on this path. So we want to do more of that. We also want to start exploring spinning out more niche specific collectives to nest under Nature Tech Collective. So, and having an oceans collective, for example, or a biocounting collective. This would necessitate having someone who basically takes the gauntlet. And it's not easy. It's always easier than it, it's always harder than it sounds. So we want to be very methodical about it. Our offering is to be their spine, provide the tech infrastructure, and maybe even find some funding to make this happen. Why are we doing this? Because Nature Tech is massive. We firmly believe that Nature Tech will be there alongside AI and blockchain as the most large disruptive industries out there. We know that unlike blockchain and AI, while it will happen on its own, we don't have the time to wait. And so we're here to push it as a nonprofit organization, a capacity builder. And one of the ways to do it is through publishing. It's through building a lot of information. And so a big initiative of ours in 2025 is to turn what is more or less a landing page with some /reports to a full knowledge hub. And for that to happen, we have Amalia who's going to be doing a lot of publishing. We're going to be creating a lot of sector maps. We're going to be calling on you guys to help us fill in the gaps of the different niches within Nature Tech, build a whole way of, driving interest into the website so we could build more members and more suppliers. But we will need to spin out these niches in order to have more and more folks kind of focusing on it. So more news on that coming up soon. But if this sounds of interest to you, please reach out. Bye, Megan, everyone. And the last thing we want to say before everyone leaves is we want to focus on governance as well. This has come up a few times. It's something we talked about for a while as well internally. We are in service of the members. We want to enable the members to take more ownership of the Nature Tech Collective. So it will start with more member advised. We want to get to a point of member driven governance. And who knows, maybe we can make this to a full member-owned DAO and beyond. This will take time. And we want to find the time in order to build this out again in the right and correct way. It's very much top of mind as well. And we very much would love your support in that. So if there's any governance geeks over there who wants to connect with us, we would love to work with you on that front as well. I'm sure there's more, but we're already at the top of the hour, and it's been a great town hall thus far. Thank you to everyone who stayed along. This is recorded. It will be sent. And it's hopefully the first of many more. Paige, you want to read us out?
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I think this was the biggest town hall I've ever had anyway with you all, and it was really exciting to like have just this open conversation. So appreciate it. And reminder that you have the Slack to keep going with all the conversations. If anyone said anything interesting, just get in touch there. Then yeah, happy it's not so happy day. Anyway, see you soon. See you next week. Next week we have one webinar with Brittany, who's in the room, about blended finance for nature restoration. That's on Tuesday. And on Wednesday we have an NTC Now with Sebastian about eDNA. So there we go. Have a
Thanks,
lovely
Paige.
one.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Gilad. Bye-bye.
Hi,
Yeah.
Paige.
Ciao,
Nice to
Gabe.
see you. Bye.